Marius Barbeau of the National Museum of Canada speaking in My Life with Indian and Folk Songs in Canada. When I was a child, my father used to take the fiddle and have me dance jigs in front of him. Jigs, Irish jigs, like the Devil's Dream, the Money Mask. And then he would sing songs like this. Rossignolet du bois joli, toi qui chantes le jour et la nuit, toi qui dis dans ton joli chant, voici le doux printemps où tous les amants vont changer d'amour. Meanwhile, my maternal grandmother, thoroughly French, named Marius C, would sing lullabies, cradle songs to the younger children in the family, like C'est la poulette grise qui a pond dans l'église, elle a pond un petit coco pour Dalila qui va faire dodo. Elle a pond un petit coco pour Dalila qui va faire dodo. Do, dis-je, dodo. Et la poulette noire qui a pond dans l'armoire, elle a pond un petit coco pour Dalila qui va faire dodo. Elle a pond un petit coco pour Dalila qui va faire dodo. Do, dis-je, dodo. This means it's the little grey hen or the little black hen that has laid an egg for whatever child you wish to name, Dalila here. Or, in the morning, she would take up a child and rock him or her, singing, Mon petit Jésus, bonjour, mes délices, mon petit Jésus, bonjour, mes délices et mes amours. J'ai rêvé cette nuit que j'étais en paradis, mais ce n'est qu'un songe, la nuit m'a trompé d'un si beau mensonge, mon âme est attristée. And this means, my little Jesus, good day. At night, this night I have dreamt of you, and so forth. Then, my mother, my own mother, who was an educated woman, while my father was a farmer and a horseman living on a farm in the village of St. Mary-Beauce, my mother had been at school, had been a teacher, and she was an organist in the church. She would teach me music at the piano, and the first piece I learned from her was À la claire fontaine m'en allant promener, which is like a national folk song for French Canada. À la claire fontaine m'en allant promener, j'ai trouvé l'eau si claire que je me suis baigné. Il y a longtemps que je t'aime, jamais je ne t'oublierai, at the clear fountain. Then I went to school, commercial school in my parish. There, everything was new to me. It was a new world. I was beginning to learn grammar, arithmetic, and so forth. One evening I shall never forget. There was an entertainment, something happening on the stage, when a Huron priest named Prosper Vincent, an aged priest, born a Huron at Lorette, Indian Lorette near Quebec, happened to be there, and he was invited to step onto the stage and sing song of his nation. Then he sang, I remember the first was La Danse de la Découverte, or the Dance of Discovery, when the Indians in Ontario, Huron, Ontario, used to go on the warpath against the Iroquois. They used to sing, whisper rather, while tramping the trail, Wenia, 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 Wenia. And then they would walk, Yanikute, Yanikute, Hane, Yanikute. This and other songs of Indians gave me quite an impression. I was a boy of about 10 then. That was my first experience with Indians, the first Indian I'd seen. He was dressed as a priest with his cassock, but he had a long face, coppery complexion, very dark eyes, very handsome, and a beautiful, sweet voice. And he danced steps as if dancing around a tree to accompany this song and other songs like Yahaneita. And he would accompany himself with a rattle. He had a rattle like this, a horn rattle, as the Maliseet Indians used on the frontier of New Brunswick and Maine. And he would sing like this. Haneita, 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 Haneita. Soon after, I left the commercial school for the classical school in Kamouraska County, far away from home, and then I virtually turned my back, as do all children who become educated at school, turn my back upon folkloric backgrounds which surrounded me in my youth, in my early youth. Then I went to school. For 6 years I learned Latin and Greek and philosophy and what not. After this, after I got my degree, went to the university in Quebec to study law for 4 years. There was no more folklore for me during that period. I turned my back upon it, as do most educated people, even in the province of Quebec. Then I won a Rhodes Scholarship, went to Oxford to study. I had my choice there, to study letters if I wanted to, or go on with law, or what. Strangely enough, I don't know by what accident, perhaps a recollection of my early youth at home, I preferred studying anthropology and folklore. And I'm glad I did. For 3 years there, and at La Sorbonne in Paris during my vacations, I studied the history of man. What is man? Where are the different races and cultures on the globe? I studied under very good direction indeed. At one moment I went into Egyptology, and I thought I might become an Egyptologist, as there was a need of recruits at Oxford at that time, and a very good British school in Cairo. My own tutor, who was a very wise man, Professor Merritt, said, "No, you will go back home when you have finished here." He knew more about my future career than I did then, because he had applied himself to authorities in Ottawa to have me appointed at the National Museum as anthropologist. I didn't know about that. I didn't know anything about my prospective future. I was very improvident. I came back to Canada, and very soon, a few months later, I was appointed a member of the Anthropological Division of the National Museum, a new division to study the Indians of Canada. It was a new departure on behalf of the National Museum. Spring came 2 or 3 months after my appointment, and the question was, where shall I go to study Indians in Canada? Northwest Coast Indians, the Totem Indians. I had prepared a thesis at Oxford on this subject, and I was very partial to it. Yet my director said, why don't you go back to Indian Lorette, near your place of birth? And at once it appealed to me. I would go back and try and find out that old priest, Vincent, from whom I had heard my first Indian songs when I was a child. It quite appealed to me. So in the spring I packed up with a little Edison phonograph and went past Quebec to Lorette, 8 miles beyond on the hills. There I found people who were quite disappointing to me. I expected to see real Indians. They were not. Not one of them spoke Huron. They had all forgotten their language. They were like white people, except that they were grouped densely in a small patch of ground, a little village, Indian Lorette. Some of them, the women, made baskets or made embroidered moccasins and lived as they could. A few of them were still hunters and guide for hunters north in the forests north of Quebec. I inquired about Priest Vincent, and they told me, yes, that he was still living, but he was aged, he was ill, and in an old man's home for priests near Quebec City. So I went to see him. The first conversation I had with him, he was most friendly and cordial. He called me Mon petit Marius, as if I were still a boy at school. And then he was quite willing to sing me all the songs he knew. He was the last one in his tribe who had learned those songs from his elders, and they had been forgotten since by other members of the tribe. And it's then that I began to learn and make records on Edison phonographs. You know, the old machine, the Edison. Most of our collections have been made on wax records in that way. They are quite imperfect compared with the tape recordings of the present day, such as this. Well, what songs then? Well, there were so many of them. I reminded him of his song, Wainahe, Wainahe, Wainahe. And then he took a little Indian drum that he had there and began to sing, Wainahe, nahe, Wainahe, nahe, Wainahe, nahe, nayaho. Yawinahe, yaho, yawinahe. Waina, wainahe, na, wainahe, na, yawinahe, yaho, yawinahe. Wainahe, nahe, wainahe, nahe, wainahe, nahe, na, yaho, yawinahe, yaho, yawinahe. Wainahe, nahe, na, wainahe, na, yawinahe, yaho, yawinahe. This was a sun dance which his people had learned once from the Iroquois Indians of Caughnawaga. So it's really an Iroquois song interpreted by Huron. Then we passed on to other songs which were danced for Sagamite feast. Sagamite is corn cooked with meat in a large cauldron in the open on a big fire, around which the Indians were clustered, ready for a feast. In Oklahoma, among the same people, other branches of the same people, they call that hamine instead of sagamite. And then the people would start sing gaily around the fire and in a ring mostly. They would sing, Yaniko, Yaniko, ya, no, hey, 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 Yaniko, Yaniko, ya, no, hey. Yaniko, Yaniko, ya, no, hey, 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 Yaniko, Yaniko, ya, no, hey. Another song of the war trail was Ala koi ayani no, ala koi ayani no, wetiane ayani no, ala koi ayani no, ala koi ayani no. Wetiane ayani no. During that first season of a few weeks, I recorded 70 or more Huron songs. These are the last that could be recorded among that people, that nation that used to inhabit central Ontario, around Midland, and gave its name to Toronto, which means karantut, or stick standing in the mud. And then gave its name to such places as the Niagara. The Niagara, what does it mean, the name? Well, it means Onyahga. It's pronounced Onyahgare, which means the thunder strikes. The thunder strikes. Why? Because at one time in the past there was in the tradition of this nation, the Iroquois and the Hurons, a tradition that there was a great dragon, a serpent, which used to live in Lake Ontario. Ontario means beautiful lake or large lake. Used to live there because the dragon lived in the waters, Ontario. And then the dragon wanted to go and see his neighbor inhabiting in another lake. The neighbor was Yerish or Kerish or Yere, Erie, which it is now, Lake Erie, which means lake lion or panther or puma. Well, the dragon wanted to go and pay visit to the puma or the lion. And then whenever a dragon or a serpent, big serpent, traveled, he'd cut a river into the surface of the earth, a trench with waters, because he was the being of the waters. And then when he had reached a spot not very far from Lake Erie, the god of thunder named Hino in the sky noticed the motion, and then he came and cast a dart down at the serpent, killing him, where he still is at the present day, roaring. And this is Niagara, the Niagara Falls. Well, there are a number of songs in a ritual which is well preserved now at Grand River, Ontario, among the Iroquois, especially the pagan Iroquois of the Grand River, the Cayuga and the Senecas there. Ritual of the Ohkiwe, or ritual of death, which is still performed every winter in the tribe there. There are 125 songs in this ritual, most of which a few years ago we have recorded, people of the National Museum like Marcel Rioux and myself, which we have recorded, words, interpretation, tunes, and all. And it was not easy to obtain them because they are usually considered secret and sacred. This Ohkiwe is also based upon the tradition of the great dragon. There was a great dragon once. The dragon was able to transform himself into a tiny glowworm, which he did one day. And he happened to be at the bottom of a pail, half full of water. A little boy noticed the pail and saw the glowworm and loved it. He brought the pail and the glowworm into the tent of his parents, and he began to play with it, to feed it. The worm grew fast, gave more food to the glowworm, which became a sort of little snake. And then it gave food, squirrels, rabbits. He would make a bow and go out hunting and get wild animals, the meat of wild animals, kept on feeding and to go fast, as we must in folk tales. The worm grew fast, terrifically fast. And then the little boy had all the trouble to find enough food for him. He would go around and kill deer and bring it. And the elders began to worry and say, "What is this? This must be a monster." So that the boy, who was still fond of his pet, would hide it. The snake dug a tunnel to hide itself under the village. A large tunnel, which, when the elders noticed, had traversed the whole circumference of the fortified town. They said, "Now it's very dangerous. We are threatened in our lives and existence. We had better go away and run away from here." So they all started in an Indian file, singing an Indian song and walking out through the gate. They walked into the opening of a cave outside, and the opening of the cave was the mouth of the dragon that was to swallow them all, the whole tribe. So the whole tribe was eaten and digested by the dragon. There were only bones left inside of him. And then this country was empty for a while. There were wild Indians of the north that happened to be hunting in that neighborhood some time later, and they heard humming underground, something like a song. They wandered and stopped, and then they discovered in the cave the bones of a people that were still there, and it's from then on that sorcerers among themselves managed to bring back to life those people who had died. And a tribe walked out of the cave one day, accompanied by lightning from the god of thunder, Hino. And it's in recollection of this that the Ohkiway ritual, which is still performed at Grand River, Ontario, in the state of New York among the Iroquois tribes, was founded. It's a commemoration of this resurrection of a whole tribe that had been devoured and destroyed by the dragon. Among the songs, there's 30 songs, I'll sing one, which is a dirge of this series of the Ohkiway. Oh, 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 ya, he na, he, we no, ne, na, he, we na, he, we na, he, we na, he, na, he na, he, we na, he, na, he na, he. One other song, which is also in that ritual connected with the snake going to visit the lion, is Ya te da ra ta se, ya te da ra ta se, ya ta da ra ta se hai, ya ta da ra ta se, ya ta da ra ta se hai. Another song in the same ritual contains the words, "Here is a leather bag that has never been used." The meaning of this is that there were young people that were going to kill the lion in its den. And they were going there with bows and arrows and a bag to fill the bag with blood that was to become the sacred blood of the lion later, a charm. And the song is, Kajere Hami Inde, Kajere Hami Inde. Here is a leather bag. Sonte Eraati, never been used, never been used. Kajere Hami Inde, Kajere Hami Inde, Kajere Hami Inde, Kajere Hami Inde, Sonte Eraati, Kajere Hami Inde, Kajere Hami Inde. Kajere haminde, kajere haminde, kajere haminde, kajere haminde, sontairati, kajere haminde, kajere haminde. While at Lorette, I met by accident a family of Maliseet Indians. The Maliseets formerly were in the forests of New Brunswick and Maine, but a few of them had settled among the Hurons of Lorette. And there was the family of Tomapol, for instance, who sang to me a few Indian canoe songs. And I remember a lullaby which some old women sang to me, a lullaby to an Algonquin child or a Maliseet child. Naki, naki, nakok, nakok, dashi, wane. We, kanashi, wane. We, kanashi, wane. We, kanashi, we. I sing to you a last song of the Huron Indians, and please remember that these songs have been forgotten everywhere now. I and the National Museum and our records are the only place where these relics of the past are now preserved, and I've sung a few of them for you to my great pleasure. Weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he. Notice how pinched is the voice of those people there. They sing in a throaty way. Weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he. Weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he. Weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he, weka yuwa ni no he. 2 or 3 years after I had joined the staff of the National Museum as an anthropologist, a delegation of Indian chiefs from the Rocky Mountains on the northwest coast came to Ottawa to interview the government. They were here for nearly a month, and I started at once to make records of Indian songs, some of the most beautiful I had heard so far, songs of the Rockies and the northwest coast. These chiefs in Ottawa were far away from home, and I noticed that some of them had a really fit of longing for their homes. One of them one day gave me this song, which is a longing song, longing for love too. Ya hey honey, hey. I recorded it, and later it was a song which they had me interpret for a film made at Crawley Films in Ottawa called The Loon's Necklace, which became world famous because of this nice story of how the loon in a lake long ago got its necklace. This is the song. Ya he hane ya ne hare ya he hine o ne hine wa ne hane ya ne hane ya ne hana he ina he ina he. A few years later, it was my turn to, at long last, go to the North Pacific coast to make records of ancient customs among the Tsimsha and the Haida, the Tlingit, and make records of songs too. Made a large collection. A few of these I'm going to give you now. I transcribed them, I learned them, some of them with the Indians themselves, and later they were published in a memoir of the American Ethnological Society, many of them. Neyuwelkinal. It's a drinking song because the Indians too, in the old days, liked to drink. They would go as packers from the Skeena River a long way off westward to Quesnel, a town of the white miners. It was the days of the gold rush in the north. They would go to Quesnel and there get a good drink and compose songs and come back with gay songs. This I wish you could hear the natives themselves sing. It will only give you an idea of what it can be. Ne Yowelkinal, ne Yowelkinal. And so forth. But the Indians were not always drinking by any means. They had serious business to attend to when at their home, and very often gave feasts in which they made great display of their own property, and then they would acquire new names or transfer old names to new people, to younger people, and the chiefs were very ambitious. They gave big potlatches, at which they would sing songs like this, Iyaho, when a chief appeared in his gorgeous robes, at the end perhaps wearing a mask, and would sing this song, solemn song of the welcome to a chief. Iyaho, Iyahe, Iyaho, Iyahe, Suwades gidaranitse, Suwades gidaranitse, It means my ancestors came once from the Gidaranids, that is from the Tlingit country north. There was once a pagan on the Nass River, which is near Portland Canal, next to the Alaskan border. Chief named Gittix. He was named Gittix from the little peninsula on which there stood several fine totem poles, and he was known to be a pagan, the last of the pagans. All the others had gone to the mission at Kincolith and become Christian. Especially when came the time of Christmas or Easter, they couldn't resist the desire to go to church there for a celebration. But old Gittix held back. The people really among his own would laugh at him a bit, deride him, and say, oh, it's because he has 3 good wives. You see, they were polygamous. 3 good wives, all daughters of important chiefs of the Nass, daughters of the Raven clan, of the Wolf clan, of the Killer Whale clan, and so forth. He wouldn't quit his wives, and he makes them work hard for him. So, times passed, Gittix was aging. One day, near Christmas time, they see old Gittix coming close to the mission. The reverend there, the missionary, whose name I will not mention, went to him and said, what is the matter? Are you joining us now here at the mission? Are you going to be of Christmas tide with us? He said, yes. Why? He was surprised. You know the condition. 1 Christian, 1 wife. You cannot keep all your wives. So, he said, yes, decided. So that's agreed. The day before Christmas, Gidaranits happened with very young women at the door of the church, very young women. This woman was not one of the 3 wives. She was another one, a tlinkit girl whom he had picked up somewhere, you see, and that was to be the new bride. The missionary was rather shocked. He expected one of the 3 wives to be kept and the others dismissed, which would have been the more decent way, I suppose, from his point of view. Well, he said, yes, I had to do that. My wives were very fine women. They belong all to the highest clans. I couldn't send one away, you see, without insulting the clan, the wolf, or the raven, or the other. I couldn't send the other away. So I had to send them away, all 3, so that they may be on the same footing. And then I had to take another one. Here is the other one now. So the missionary couldn't but accept the new proposal. Well, then he became a Christian. He was on the boat. The people among themselves, especially the members of the clans, would point a finger at Gittix every time they met him to deride him. They were all hostile to him, you see. They would mock at him. He became annoyed of this continuous mockery. He used to be high chief, and now, you see, he was just a common Christian. So he decided to give a big feast, a big potlatch, to which he would bestow furs and all sorts of gifts upon each one. And he composed this song, and curiously enough, you may be interested to hear, he's the very one who sang the song himself, you see, when he was a very old man in 1927, the old Gittix. He sang me the song, Hagoslen Hagoye, Hagoslen Hagoye. Why don't you mind your own affairs? That was the refrain, you see, which he would sing, and the audience had to repeat. And in the audience were the guilty ones, were gossiping him. They would have to sing in chorus with him, why don't you mind your own affairs? Why don't you mind your affairs? And now at the end of each stanza, there are several stanzas, you would say, now I speak to you, women of Ginkoles. You see, women of this tribe here. Now I speak to you, women of Gitchadin, another tribe there. I speak to you. Why don't you mind your own affairs? You point a hand at me. Your finger is dirty. Why do you point it to me? And why are you better than myself? You are only the worst. And then he would sing, Hagoslen, Hagoslen, Hagwe, 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 Ti will she go willow welle, Maranur sele she wiggy ustilib gehu eslen, Hagoslen, Hagwe, Hagoslen, Hagwe, Hagoslen, Goslen Hagway, they will shagun willow willy, Maranus, they lishi wig you, they live you westland. Goslen, you still it, you still it, you still it. After this, after he had bestowed gifts upon each one of them, they were decent enough towards him. They wouldn't mock him any longer, whether he lived with a young Hutsini bride or not. The Indians of the North and other coast countries forget their customs of the past, but I still happen to be lucky enough to come before these songs were forgotten, as they are being now by the younger generation, who are progressive and are industrialists. They work at the canneries everywhere, or on the railroads, or in lumber camps, so they don't learn any longer the lullabies or the nice songs of the ancestors. Lullabies like Nadudu, or dirge like Hano, and so many other beautiful songs of the past. Nadudu is a cradle song or a lullaby of the same Eagle clan as Gitikstu. He's the one who gave it to me in 1928. He was an old man then. I tried to repeat the experience another year, and when I came there I found that he had lost his voice and memory. He was near death. This is in the totem pole country, where the tallest and the finest of the totem poles happen to be. The lullaby song which I mentioned to you, Nadudu, means, dear child, dear boy, dear little boy, here it is. Nadu, Nadudu, Nadu, Nadudu, Nadu, Nadudu. When this is being sung in the feast, the chief or a grandmother come forward with a little boy in their arms and show the child to everybody all around, and they give presents to. That's the first appearance of a child in the potlatch house or in the feast house of his people. In former times, of course, these such feasts would mark the various phases of life. This is the first occasion for the child to appear before the public. Nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, go nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, alta de doi wedos, alta de doi gimchti, medzi samase, temwel will gede, nedam will rot, we saretag stevye, lol chian mas, dev will mokl, we ye. Alte, alte, altsam gulhatam and sirot, jam rallebliv, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, go nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do, nadu, nadu, do. This means, and there are several stanzas of words. The first stanza is this. The words pass from the mouth of the uncle or grandmother showing the child into, supposedly, the mouth of the child itself. The child says, Grandmother, grandmother, take good care of me. I'm small now, but someday I'll grow up and I'll be a tall man. When I am, I'll go to the fishing streams of my ancestors. I'll go to Hyanmas, where the salmon run up the rivers to spawn. When I've gone up the rivers following the salmon, I'll catch the salmon in my traps. And when I've caught salmon, I'll split it in two, I'll scrape it, I'll clean it, I'll put it on the racks, I'll have it dry in the sun, smoke a fir and cedar, and then when it's all dried and ready and good, I'll eat it from head to tail, and I'll leave just the backbone to my grandmother. Na-do, na-do-do. The people went through life, and death came eventually. Death, even now, is a time for the Indians when they cannot resist, singing traditional songs of their own people, songs of the past. Some of them are so ancient that they go back to Siberia and China. There is even a refrain among the songs of the Northwest Coast, which is Hayu, Hayu, Hayu. And such songs of the Eagle clan and the Wolf clan means Alice, Alice in a very Chinese language from which their ancestors had obtained them through people that have transmitted them such refrains, such dirges from ancient China, Mongolia, Siberia onto the Northwest Coast, which is a continuous territory anyway. Hanu is a dirge of the wolf, the high wolf chief of the upper Nass River. Hanu, Hanu, Hanu. It was identified by a Chinese professor as being Chinese originally, or something like it, and more remotely Hindu. It was a Buddhistic song. Imagine hearing dirge songs among the Indians of the Northwest Coast that were prehistoric Buddhist. Well, that seems to be the truth. Hanu, and I'm going to use a larger drum for this, a deeper drum. And these drums, such as this, is a skin, a moose skin stretched on a hoop of cedar, bent in a circle. It's a pretty large drum. Well, these drums are shamanistic drums, such as the natives of Siberia use in their rituals of life and death. And such drums have been transmitted to the Indians of the Northwest Coast, and they make them now everywhere in the Northwest. They are Buddhistic drums of the natives of British Columbia, northern British Columbia. And Hanu is the dirge of the wolf chief. Hanu, Hanu, hey, hey, yeah, yeah. Hanu, Hanu, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hanu, 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 yeah, Hanu, Tarok, 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 yeah.